Next story. My sister's husband hit on me. I'm so confused about how to deal with this. I'm so angry. 2 nights ago, my husband, I 37, my sister, 26, and her husband, 29, and a group of friends went up to a cabin in the mountains and had a private rave, which is something we do once or twice a year. Obviously, people were on a bunch of stuff, so everyone was high, dancing, and enjoying their time. My husband and my sister's husband are very close friends since before we even met them. We've all been married for 4 years now, we have a baby, and they have their first one on the way, which they just found out about exactly 3 days ago. My guts keep telling me that he's not happy with the news, but my sister is insisting that he wants this. For more context, the four of us are very close, we live close to each other, and we spend all our weekends together. They babysit our baby a lot. We're a family, and becoming an even more like a real family, since our children are going to be cousins. Obviously, my sister didn't take any drugs, and she went to sleep relatively early than the rest of us. Her husband and I got to talking, as we always do, now about pregnancy and the new exciting life and all that. At some point I got cold and he put his jacket on me, and I said something like I'm getting old and I'm cold easily, and how tired I am being a mom and I feel old. He tells me how beautiful I am, or how any guy would want to be with me. So far this is very normal. He's like a brother to me, and I appreciated what he said. But then he wouldn't stop at the compliments. It got too much that I felt so uncomfortable. He was being very touchy. He made it seem like it was a brotherly love or whatever, but the vibe was so not that. The way he was looking at me, what he would say, and the way he put his hand on my shoulder or hugged me, it was absolutely a romantic vibe. But then I realized I'm high and he's also high, and I thought there was absolutely no way he would hit on me, and am just reading the signs wrong. Maybe it started in my head, and I made it bigger than it is, so I decided to give it another chance just so he'd prove me wrong, and it's really not that. But as the night went on, wherever I went he followed, and tried so hard to keep the same conversation going. It started to feel like he was flirting with me hard, and my anxiety spiked, and I totally bad tripped for the last 3 hours. What the F **** is he doing? If he's going to do this, why on earth would he choose his wife's sister and his friend's wife to do this with? He knows very, very well that I'd do anything to protect my sister. Even from him. Is he sabotaging his relationship on purpose? I don't understand. But then again, I keep thinking that he was on a lot of stuff, and maybe it was the love drug talking, but there's always a limit you can't cross. No matter how high you are, you're still aware of who I am, aware of what you're saying and talking, and aware that you're married. And your wife is sleeping in a room inside. Obviously, I have to tell my sister. But how? She's in the excitement phase. She just learned she's pregnant. She loves him very much. He also adores her so much, which is why I'm so confused. As soon as we left the next morning, I told my husband everything, and I cried so much. His advice was that I wait a few days, that my sister's husband is still in shock with the news and could be affecting his behavior, and after that to talk to him privately, straight out ask him what a F*** was that about, and that he made me so uncomfortable and thought it was inappropriate. Next story. My husband, 32M, has decided that his infidelity is an off-limit topic for discussion for me. 27F.
How do I talk to him about this?
Hey, everyone. My husband, 32M, and I, 27F, have been having a lot of problems since we married, it seems. We've had problems the entire duration of our relationship, 9 years, but ever since we got married a year ago, it feels like things have become increasingly more intense. I've always been the feeler type. I spend a lot of time on self-help. Books, podcasts, videos, especially relationship content. I've probably spent countless hours trying to mend our relationship. I've learned that I'm an anxious attachment style, and he's an avoidant style. My needs are his triggers, and his needs are mine, basically. He has agreed to work on some of these things together, and he's aware of the dynamic between us. At this stage, we've probably spent thousands of dollars on couples therapy. He's also read a lot of the books I've read around self-help and relationships, which he found insightful, which I think is evidence he does want to develop personally. Our relationship has been a perpetual revolving door of me seeking his attention and his default response being dismiss or avoid. I can't even count how many times we've sat in silent for minutes, sometimes hours or days, Or how many times he's just not said anything and walked away when I clearly need his attention. He's gotten better over time, but I feel like his level of sensitivity makes it really difficult to solve any conflict. At the slightest sign of conflict, he goes silent and sullen, and he can be moody for days. It can be something as little as me making a face at him that he interpreted as very negative. We recently had a big fight about this very thing. I really wished he asked me a question about it instead of angrily storming away saying I'm accusing him of something because I made a stink face. The context for this particular fight is surrounding our sex life, which has historically been lacking in both frequency and passion. For many years, I would initiate and he would dismiss me, and eventually my initiations became less and less. It was endlessly frustrating for me. I felt undesired, and sometimes like I was disgusting. Especially when I found out he was actively looking at women on Instagram or Reddit and looking at porn or masturbating. I don't particularly want to discuss the ethics of this since it's a divided topic, but for our relationship we both agreed that it was harming us and that he needed to stop. Several times since he agreed to this, I found out that he'd been doing it again. I've been understanding a few times knowing that this can be called an addiction, but eventually I got fed up with it and told him he needed to stop cheating on me in this way. The thing to understand is that we do not talk about this. I want to, but he has decided that this topic is off limits. You can imagine that this does not foster trust for me in this relationship. I tried to explain to him that if he could reassure me and talk to me first, me asking him how it's going has led to numerous arguments and hours of sulking and shame on his part, I would respond a lot more positively. This particular problem is a huge thorn in our side, and even the slightest whiff of it always causes a big problem. This most recent argument, he said that I'm as selfish and self-interested as he is, and that everything is about my feelings and how I put them over his. I had previously stated that it upsets me that we can't talk about this issue, and how I felt like I had to protect his feelings from his own shame instead of validating mine. He has never formally apologized for any of this. Only one time if I asked him if he would apologize to me, and his response was just sorry, while sounding obviously angry. He used an example about how whenever there is an alcoholic there is a lot more sympathy and focus on the wife, and he argued that the alcoholic's feelings should also be equally weighted and considered. I think this is what he meant, but I really don't think this helped his case much to me. He is an expert at blame shifting and making himself to be the victim. This is a person who does not talk about their feelings or their needs, and I'm not denying he has them, even though he literally has denied he does himself. So, it's almost strange hearing him insist his feelings are being ignored. To me, it's an argument about whose feelings take precedence, which is a can of worms. What I've been looking for the entire duration of our relationship is someone who wants to talk to me, be curious about what's going on with me, just to validate my feelings. I've never been perfect, and I've also had my fair share of fuck-ups. I really don't know how to address this. We've literally been taking a course on how to talk to one another, and he said it isn't that hard, and yet he struggles to do it in the way we've learned. When I harped on how it wasn't hard, so he should just do it, he said I was demeaning him. He's recently said he wonders if he would be better off alone, and I feel like if I didn't try to be our glue, we would fall apart pretty quickly. It's clear to me my husband has a lot of shame, fear, and guilt about this, and generally, if I'm being honest, he is not the type to take any help or
Complain about anything.
This can make him feel pretty cold and distant, besides the fact that his behaviors reinforce it. Problems like these are really pushing me to the edge because, as he puts it, we're different people with different core values and we're at a stalemate. He's not wrong, but I think this attitude is pretty poisonous to the health of our relationship. I talked with my mom, and she said the woman usually has to change to accommodate the man because women are more flexible. That hurt. I'm getting a lot more comments than I thought, probably because of the title. Automod rejected some of my less cliffhanger tries. The general consensus is the same. I appreciate the people who were kind enough to write a comment. Thanks for the harsh words. Am I the asshole for not eating a Thanksgiving dish I suspect was made last year? I'm in my 30s, and my husband and I have a large family. We celebrated Thanksgiving with over 20 people, including my divorced parents, their new spouses, siblings, and kids. Every year, everyone brings a dish, and we usually coordinate to avoid repeats. This year, my sister-in-law, SL, brought her mom's famous sweet potato casserole. I thought it was sweet since her mom passed away earlier this year, and she was honoring her memory. But when I saw the dish, it didn't seem right. It looked like last year's leftovers. The casserole came in several small containers, and while it didn't smell off, it was dry and didn't look like a fresh casserole. I didn't try it and discreetly told my husband about my concerns. He didn't try it either. Later, my mom called me, saying my SIL was upset because she noticed I didn't eat her dish. I explained my fears to my mom, who dismissed them, saying I was just being too picky. She assured me that a frozen casserole couldn't last a year without getting moldy, but I wasn't convinced. I feel bad for my SIL, but I couldn't bring myself to eat something I wasn't sure was safe. So, am I the asshole for not eating it? Update: after reading your comments, I decided to have a face-to-face conversation with my mom. We agreed I could always be honest with her, and she hadn't told anyone else in the family about the yam debacle, We called my brother and arranged a meeting with him and my SIL. When we got there, my SIL was crying, and my brother led us to the kitchen. It turns out the casserole wasn't a year-old leftover after all. Before her mom passed, SIL had made several family recipes, including the sweet potato casserole, as a bonding experience. She had frozen some portions, and this year, she thawed them to serve at Thanksgiving. She'd tried to replicate the taste but struggled, feeling the pressure. In the end, she decided to serve the frozen casserole, thinking no one would notice. Apparently, I had always complimented her casserole in the past, and she was expecting praise this year too. When I didn't try it, she felt hurt. I apologized to her for hurting her feelings, and she apologized for singling me out. Afterward, my mom, brother, and I cleaned the kitchen, and my mom made SIL a soup, ajiaco, if you know, you know. As a gesture of goodwill, I'm planning to treat my SIL to a mini spa day to help her feel better. So, no big fight, no drama. I'll be more thoughtful in the future, but I still stand by not eating something I wasn't comfortable with. Everyone's fine, and no one got sick. And as for my mom's belief about frozen food and mold,
I don't know what to say.
Her freezer only had meat and ice cream. Am I the asshole for refusing to edit my mom's photos during our family vacation? I'm a 49-year-old woman, and I'm really struggling with my relationship with my mom, who is 76. We went on a family trip to Yellowstone National Park recently, and what should have been a great time ended in a mess, leaving me emotionally drained and questioning myself. Here's some background. My mom grew up in Taiwan, where appearances were everything. Her family prioritized looks, and many of her sisters underwent significant plastic surgeries. My mom has had her share too: nose jobs, eyelid surgeries, facelifts, fillers, you name it. While I don't judge her for wanting to look good, her fixation on appearances has dominated her life and caused tension in our family for years. During our trip, we took a lot of family photos. When we reviewed them, my mom immediately demanded that I edit hers. She wanted me to erase her wrinkles, lighten her skin, slim her face, and basically make her look 40 years younger. I told her she looked great just as she was, and refused to do it.
She didn't handle that well.
She said her friends would judge her if the photos weren't edited, and accused me of trying to humiliate her by leaving them as is. I tried to explain that I didn't want to enable her obsession with appearances, and that she's beautiful for her age. But nothing I said worked. She locked herself in her room for the rest of the day, crying and refusing to talk to anyone. The next morning, she packed her bags, flew back to Tennessee without saying goodbye, and left the rest of us to salvage the trip. This isn't the first time her obsession with appearances has caused issues. She's photoshopped pictures of my kids without asking, lightening their skin, and altering their features to fit an outdated Eurocentric beauty standard. She constantly criticizes my husband and me, nitpicking everything from our noses to our jawlines. She often makes rude comments about how we should take better care of ourselves. She even lies to her friends, claiming to be in her 40s when she's clearly in her 70s. Her need for validation is constant. She always asks for compliments on everything, whether it's her cooking, her appearance, or just something she's done. When she doesn't get the response she's hoping for, she spirals into self-pity or lashes out. It's exhausting, and I feel like I'm walking on eggshells all the time. I know my mom struggles with self-esteem and body image issues, but it feels like she's dragging everyone around her down with her. I've tried setting boundaries before, like asking her not to edit pictures of my kids and refusing to let her make rude comments about our appearances, but every time I stand up for myself, she makes me feel like the villain. Now, after she left the trip and isn't speaking to me, I'm wondering if I went too far. Should I have just edited the photos to keep the peace? Or am I right to draw the line here? How do I handle a relationship with someone who's so fixated on appearances and external validation? Is there any way to help her see the damage she's causing, or do I just need to accept that this is who she is? I'm feeling really stuck and could use some advice on how to move forward. Title: I, 29F, set a boundary about marriage, but I'm worried my boyfriend, 35M, has no intention of proposing. What should I do? I, 29F, have been in a relationship with my boyfriend, 35M, for 5 years, and we have a 1-year-old daughter together. Marriage has always been very important to me, and my boyfriend knew this from the start. Initially, I thought the delay in getting married was due to the financial pressures we were facing from buying a house and the unexpected, but very much wanted pregnancy. It was a stressful time for both of us, but I assumed we would get there eventually. However, when I was 7 months pregnant, my boyfriend expressed concerns about our relationship. He said that while he wanted to get married eventually, there were some issues we needed to address first. This conversation took place over a year ago now. Since then, I have worked hard to improve myself, both as a partner and a mother. I feel that I've addressed most, if not all, of the issues he raised during that conversation. However, despite all my efforts, he hasn't mentioned marriage again. At that time, I made it clear that marriage was a goal for me, and I needed a decision on whether we would get married by the end of this year. I've been transparent about my expectations, and I've done everything I can to contribute to the relationship. I haven't brought up the topic of marriage again, as I believe he knows how I feel and what my timeline is. But lately, I've had a gut feeling that he has no intention of proposing before the end of the year. I really want this relationship to work, especially for the sake of our daughter, but I don't want to continue in a relationship where there is no commitment. What should I do? Should I bring it up again, risking the possibility of ruining a potential surprise proposal? Or should I stay silent and, if he hasn't proposed by the end of the year, follow through with my boundary and move out? Update: after receiving a lot of helpful advice, I decided to sit down and have an honest conversation with him. I asked him how he felt about our relationship and about the concerns he had raised previously. Many of you asked what those issues were, so here's a bit more context. When I was 7 months pregnant, I was stressed out, working long hours to help save for the down payment on our house, and dealing with a high-risk pregnancy. I wasn't easy to be around, and we fought over little things. He was unhappy, and we were both under a lot of pressure. Once we closed on the house, I gave birth to our daughter and went on maternity leave. The tension and fighting naturally eased. It was really a stressful phase in my life, but things seemed to calm down after a while. When I brought up our previous conversation about marriage, he said that he didn't think it was a fair comparison to make because I'm now balancing family and school commitments, and he feels like it's not the same as before. I pointed out that, yes, I'm busy, but I've been handling the pressures of family life and school without letting it affect my mood or the relationship. In the end, he said there are new problems, but he couldn't quite articulate what they were. He just mentioned that he's unhappy but would let me know when I do something that bothers him. At this point, I decided to get to the heart of the matter, so I directly asked him if he wanted to marry me. He immediately said it wasn't the right time to have that discussion and ended the conversation. When I mentioned our previous discussion about marriage and the timeline, he tensed up and said he didn't even remember the conversation. For those asking, I just wanted a simple courthouse wedding, nothing fancy. Finances weren't a factor. Some people have suggested counseling, but I don't see the point in continuing to invest more time and energy into a relationship that seems to be going nowhere. I'm not interested in convincing him to marry me. He's had plenty of time to make this decision, and at this point, I'm not willing to wait anymore. I'm disappointed, but also relieved to have clarity. This situation has been incredibly stressful and distracting, and I can't continue like this. I've made the decision to leave. Now, I need to figure out what that looks like and how to make it work. Next story. Best way to end my 25F relationship with my partner, 31M, before he proposes? We've been together for nearly 2.5 years, and at some point this year, my eyes started to open to red flags. Maybe it was brain development ick. I really love him, but if he's in a mood, he is a different person. I can be moody as well, but I always have enough nice to show him love and kindness in these moments. I also spend a lot of time alone now because I'm burned out from his negativity and feel he puts very little effort into us. I also feel scared to be myself around him lately because he has such a mean sense of humor and everything is a joke. Last year he told me he needed me to write down a list of my boundaries so he could remember. I told him no as it felt degrading, and I doubt he would reference a sheet of paper before doing something questionable anyway. From that point on, I've started to feel distant. I was honest and communicated with him about issues I've had, including this, and he has started to act better. But still has random backslides where he's huffing and slamming doors closed or saying something seriously insensitive. I'm unhappy, and I daydream about a partner who is romantic, respectful, and patient. He recently showed me a ring he was having made. I was surprised as I hadn't been talking weddings or engagement recently and have been evaluating us. It is pretty, but not at all like anything I had sent him in the past when he asked around a year into dating. TBH, this has further made me feel like he doesn't really listen to or see me and is checking off boxes. I am also unfortunately suspicious that he is only being kinder and more attentive than he was because he wants us to get married, but will immediately backslide as soon as it's done. I feel like the healthiest choice for both of us is for me to exit. I sincerely love him, but I keep getting this feeling that if I take this further, I will regret it. Both of my parents have approached me about how they feel he is not very kind to me, and they worry/see that I've become sadder and more withdrawn. They always emphasize that they still like BF and will support my choices, but I know they would not say anything if they weren't concerned. I feel awful that he has started ring stuff, and I don't want him to be out of more money. Should I tell him to cancel whatever plans and try to sell the diamond he already bought? I suspect he'll try to get me to stay and that he will work on himself, but I've known him for long enough that I'm unconvinced. Next story. My 26F husband's 28 feet stink and I can't stand it anymore. I get that feet are not the cleanest part of the body and that they're bound to smell sometimes. But Jesus Christ. For context, my husband works in a wood mill. He wears heavy work boots, which of course make his feet sweat. He will often re-wear pairs of socks he wore to work, sometimes wearing the same pair for 3 or 4 days. I've asked him not to do this because it smells so horrid, I can't deal with it. But even still, that doesn't matter. As soon as he comes home and takes his shoes and socks off, the smell is instant and permeates the air. It even lasts after he takes a shower. And it doesn't smell like just sweaty feet from a long day. No. It legitimately smells like he has been walking around in a sewage tank, and I've asked myself on several occasions if that's what he's really doing before he comes home. Because I just cannot fathom the smell and how it is that bad. I've tried to be nice to him about it before with little suggestions, and he gets defensive and mopey. I try to be firm about it and tell him to wash his damn feet. Same reaction. At this point, I don't know what else to do. I'm currently hiding in my bathroom because I cannot stand to be laying next to him as he sleeps and stinks up the entire bedroom. We've been together almost 10 years and his feet have never not had a little odor to them, but never this bad. Next story. Should I, 33F, tell my best friend that she, 32F, hurt me by not really including me in her wedding? My best friend of almost a decade got married about a week ago. I thought we were mutually each other's best friends. Turns out I didn't even make it into her top 3. This is a person who I see regularly, who I have traveled with extensively outside the country, I've celebrated a lot of life events with, and who officiated my wedding last year. I didn't have a bridal party, so she was the only person that had a special role. Before I knew who her wedding party was, I had offered to do a reading, thinking I could return the favor for officiating our wedding. A couple weeks later, she asked me if I would do the reading, and she said that would be great because she and her husband were deciding to keep the wedding party small. I was a couple drinks in, and it took me a second to realize that this was her way of saying I wasn't in the wedding party. I put on a good face and thought, hell at least. I'm involved and I'm sure she'll keep me involved in other ways. I'm not a particularly traditional person, so maybe she figured I wouldn't care as much. Over the next year of planning, she didn't really include me, despite the fact that I offered help and expressed interest. I was feeling okay about the whole thing, but during the wedding, I found out that I wasn't invited to the rehearsal dinner, despite the fact that I would be doing something during the wedding. I had also asked that we also get a professional photo together, so I could put it with one I had from my wedding. That didn't happen either. Needless to say, I'm baffled and saddened by the whole thing. I'd like to pretend like I'm not hurt, but it's forced me to reevaluate a relationship that I considered on par with family. I went from thinking that this person was my ride or die to feeling that she didn't want me around. Other people who know both of us are also confused and think it's weird. To be fair, their perception of our friendship could be biased by how I talk about it. My husband thinks I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, but he also doesn't have any close friendships that are anywhere as intimate as this. Should I bring this up to my friend, or should I just stay quiet and distance myself a bit? I can't imagine that much good will come of bringing it up this late, but I truly feel like I've been grieving a deep friendship that I'm realizing now may have been a bit one-sided. I didn't want to bring it up before the wedding because wedding planning is stressful, and I didn't want to be the person in her life causing drama. So folks, Wibda, if I brought this up a month or more after the wedding, does it feel like the benefits of gaining some clarity benefit the potential awkwardness that might come from it? Next story. My 30/F husband, 35/M, ruins all occasions and events by sulking. I really love my husband, he does a lot for me, and is an all-around great guy. Sure, we have a few issues, but we are mostly working around them, and that's alright. But one almost deal-breaker kind of issue that we have is that when he gets upset, he gets really upset. And that can be before important events or date nights, and that ruins the event. That's not to say that I don't fight with him before events too. It'll be me being annoyed, pointing out something, then him saying sorry or refuting my allegation, and then I'll just consciously decide to either resolve it or shelve it till later and continue having fun at the event. But he stews in it like a wet towel if he gets angry, and then just sulks through the event, and that ruins my mood and the event. Example, yesterday I had tickets for a comedy show which we were supposed to go to. He was at the venue on time, and I was stuck in traffic in pouring rain and reached half an hour late. I had met up with a friend for drinks prior, and I did try my hardest to schedule enough buffer time. I told him to please wait comfortably in the car as I was getting late, and I gave him a screenshot of the ticket, so he could go in before I came also. He told me they were not accepting screenshots, but wanted to see them on my phone. By the time I reached, he was extremely angry. I apologized profusely and showed the PPL the same screenshot, and they accepted it. And we went in. He was sulking the whole show, did not laugh or smile. I tried so hard to hold his hand and try to cheer him up, to no avail, and then we canceled the dinner date we were going to go on and came back home. He said he was getting bit by mosquitoes, could have sat in car, and he was not let in, but we were let in with that same mode. This makes me feel like he allowed himself to get extremely angry on purpose. Contrast this with, we had a huge fight once before going on a hike, and I cried a lot the night before, but the next morning I decided to have a good time and then sort it out once we got home. And we did. In our 3 years of dating, almost every trip, every Christmas, every birthday, every activity I had planned has gone this way. Because when he gets angry at something small, he will not accept your apology, not let you salvage the situation, and will just sit there silently and sulk. There was one time I made a throwaway comment which was not even rude, which he misunderstood during a trip, and then the rest of the trip was him sitting there silently, me apologizing and being irritated at the same time. We have a great marriage otherwise. But I have panic attacks about having to give up all the fun things in life because my companion is like this. I sometimes wish he wasn't there so I can have fun. I am so scared that the rest of my life will be like this. Before we went on a recent vacation to Thailand, which we planned for months, I told him, if you sulk and fight on this trip, I will never travel with you again. I don't know if that worked or what, but we didn't fight. This is especially weird for me, because my mom was this way. Every event was ruined, because she got upset over something tiny and wanted to punish us with her mood. It got to a point where my dad stopped inviting her, or even telling her about the things he was planning to do. I am scared that that's where my relationship is also headed. How do I fix this? What should I do in this situation? TLDR. Husband gets upset, sulks, and ruins all occasions, trips, and events. I want to experience these fun and amazing things with him, but I am scared that this negative attitude he brings will ruin all fun events and occasions in my life. What should we do? Edit 1. Random thing. But when we eventually fought about it, he said, "You want to be let off the hook for your mistake, and that's why you expected me to get over it soon." Like, man, I didn't talk to me about how disappointed you are later. I wanted to be let off the hook for 1 or 2 hours, where we watch a show and have dinner. That's not too much, right? Edit 2. For people advising me to leave, I am soft exiting. In the sense, I am trying to see what life alone will be like for me. I have gotten a job in a different country that will keep me away for 2 years at the least. I could extend it if I wanted. The employers have shown a lot of interest in me making it permanent. It will be a long-distance marriage at that point, but I need to give myself a chance to see what a life without him will look like for me. If that life is better, then that's what it'll be for me. Next story. Fiancé expects me to pay off her debt to her parents before marriage, then pay for everything during marriage. Hi everyone. A good bit of background here. I, 43M, proposed to my fiancé, 38F, 3 weekends ago, and we are thinking about getting married next spring/summer. We've been together for approximately 2 years and don't live together, but see each other 3 to 5 days a week. She has a son who's planning to go to university in a couple years, and I have no children. I take care of my mother, who has dementia, while working remotely at my mother's place. My fiancé owns a house with approximately $180K left in the mortgage, and she has a debt to her parents of $200K, which was used to offset her mortgage. She is also in the midst of a lawsuit from last year for $200K from her ex, not the son's father, who claims that is the amount he put into that house. A couple months ago, she asked if I can pay back the debt to her parents in a lump sum, 80% of my savings, if we get married, and I told her that I'd rather pay off the mortgage, so we won't have to pay the bank interest, and she disagreed. She is adamant about paying off her parents' debt, so they can enjoy their money while they're living, to which I agree. I let her know back then that I would like to have my name on the house deed before I make any payments towards that house, including debt to her parents, to which she obliged. The $200,000 she is asking for is about 80% of my current savings. She says she is living paycheck to paycheck, to which I lent her $15K over the past year to help her with bills. I know it's not easy for her being a single mother with a house to pay for. She makes $90K per year, and I make $135K. I was planning to move into the house next month and work from my mother's place to take care of her, while my fiancé and her son are at work and school. I would return to my fiancé's house and hire part-time help for my mother whenever I'm absent. My fiancé disagreed with that plan, but she agreed for me to visit my mother on Sundays, while hiring someone to check in on my mother for 30 minutes 4x per day on the remaining days. This will cost about $1,500 per month. While living with my fiancé, I let her know that I can cover her monthly bills for the house, internet, gas, water, electricity, cell phones, and car insurance, but I will not pay anything towards the mortgage/debt without my name on the deed. She agreed. The reason I'm asking for some sort of ownership of the house is because of her past lawsuit, where she threw her ex out of the house, and he was basically a renter from the time they got the house together 8 years ago. He did not have documented ownership. They did so she can secure her mortgage in her name. I want to avoid a similar situation in case things don't work out between us in the future. A couple nights ago, she mentioned that her cousin broke off her wedding plans because her fiancé disagrees on how the finances are split. She asked me, "What are your plans for our finances?" We spoke about this before, and I told her the same thing. Once my name is on the house deed, I'd like to share monthly bills such that we each have an equivalent amount to spend/save once bills are paid. I.e., after bills, she'll have $2,000 left from her monthly pay, and I'll have $2,000 left. This would be easy if we had a shared bank account, but she is against that and wants us to have access to each other's account in case either of us kicks the bucket. After I explained the expense sharing idea, she got furious and said the man should pay for absolutely everything. I asked her, what if I go broke? What are you going to do with the money you'll be saving? She said she'll pay whatever remaining bills, and the money she saves in her account will be icing on the cake for spending money, for which I'd have to let her know about whenever I make a purchase. She has no plan for savings. I told her I disagree with that and would rather share everything more evenly, but she considers any splitting of bills to be a bad idea. I'm thinking she got influenced by her cousin's breakup. The next day, she said she wants to break up with me through text because she wants to stick to her plan. How can I salvage this relationship so we both can agree on finances, with neither of us breaking our bank accounts? I already proposed a shared spending account to which we deposit our paychecks into. She totally disagrees with that. TLDR, my fiancé wants me to pay all expenses while we're married, including prior debt to her parents, while the money she brings into her bank account is used for our additional spending. I disagree with that and would like to have a shared or equally distributed income after all bills are paid. She wants to break up because of this. How can I find a more common solution? Update. She paid me back $11K for separate $5K and $6K loans 5 months ago and borrowed $4K to repair her leaking roof a month afterwards, to which she still owes me. I found out about her ex's lawsuit almost a year ago. From time to time, I'd ask her what the status was, and she'd always say that she heard no updates from her lawyer. The last time I asked was a couple months ago. Next story. My boyfriend didn't want to help in a medical emergency. I'm very torn about something that happened and would like an outsider's perspective. My 22F boyfriend, 22M, and I have been together for almost a year. During the relationship, it has always been a problem that he never prioritizes me and chooses his own comfort over me. This is because he's been struggling a lot with his mental health and didn't have the mental strength to give me the love and effort I deserve. I understood this and chose to support him and believe his promises of being less selfish in the future, as beside not being prioritized, he was kind and loving to me. Besides, his selfishness always involves small things that some might perceive as not a big deal. A few examples are not wanting to drive me home, a 10-minute drive, as it will cost him money, or he doesn't want to leave his cat, or he's wearing pajamas. Another example would be rarely coming over to my place, as again, he doesn't want to leave his cat. He prefers eating dinner at his place, or he doesn't feel comfortable in big, happy families. Another example would be that when my cat went missing, he didn't help searching the first week as he didn't feel like it, or he decided to smoke knowing my mom expected us to help searching, and then didn't come as he didn't want my mom to see him stoned. A last example would be that he hasn't taken me on a date ever since we started dating. This is because he had to do a hair test for court, so he didn't feel like going out as he felt restricted because he couldn't drink. I've always had an understanding for this, and I genuinely didn't mind as I enjoyed all our lazy movie nights, and I was promised a better time once his troubles were over, and he felt mentally better. This went on for 9 months until he finally got his hair test done. Last September, he did start making more efforts. He came to pick me up and brought me back home. He started paying for my food when we ordered takeout. We went to a festival, and when I didn't feel good, he stayed with me and cared for me. Lastly, we went on a vacation. And I got sick one evening where he also took care of me. So he was really working on it and was finally starting to step up. Until the end of September, when he broke a very important boundary. Because of this, I've been acting more distant, meaning I don't say, I love you 1,000 times a day, and I'm not as affectionate anymore, touching him all the time, giving him kisses any chance I get, and being very sexually active. I've been trying to get over the disrespect and break of trust, but I can't help but to feel less love and desire for him. Of course, I still deeply love him, but things just don't feel the same anymore. My boyfriend noticed this and has been less energetic as he thinks it's a little unfair as he didn't cheat or treated me horrible. Now I'm finally getting to the part that I wanted to talk about. Last week my parents were on trip. My brother, 20M, who went to play a hockey match in another city, 40-minute drive, called me as he fell during his match and couldn't walk/drive anymore. As my parents were not available, he asked me to come so I could drive him to the hospital as his foot was already looking very swollen and he was in a lot of pain. Now, because my brother took the car to go to his match, I asked my boyfriend, who was already at my place, to drive me there as it was a medical emergency and I didn't have a car. He told me he didn't want it because he didn't really feel like it as he was tired, and he told me it would ruin his evening as he had made plans to go for a drink with his friends. Mind you, there were still 3 hours left until he was supposed to meet up with them. Eventually, the mother and sister of my brother's girlfriend, his girlfriend has a broken foot herself, so couldn't help either, drove there and picked him up despite the mother undergoing surgery 2 days prior. Meanwhile, my boyfriend went out with his friends. After this happened, my family, my brother's girlfriend's family, and my friends are shocked/angry at his lack of empathy and willingness to help. The day after, I had to explain to him, over chat, why I was upset as he didn't understand. After explaining, he blamed me for his lack of empathy as I've been acting distant, and it's making him think twice before he drops everything for me. And he told me it was unfair that I was upset as he explained his past to me, and I should understand why he behaves that way. He also blamed it on the medical emergency happening on an unfortunate moment, and that he had simply hoped someone else would help out. I stood firm during this conversation and kept my point, so he eventually apologized. Yesterday, after a week of not seeing each other, we had a talk. This talk went totally wrong as I got so upset that I ended up leaving. He only talked about his own feelings and then added up, but I understand your view, and I'm sorry. He also told me that I just have a lot of emotions, that everything has context, that I interpret everything wrong, and that I generalize everything. He also told me that the medical emergency wasn't a big deal either, as my brother just hurt his foot. I was so angry and in disbelief, as all I hoped for was a genuine apology. After I left, he sent me a few long texts explaining how upsetting and hurtful it is for him to hear all this negative feedback. I did call him a narcissist. He also told me that he was sorry and for me to come back so we could finish the talk. I ignored these messages as I was too upset until he sent me a long voice message explaining his side again, but also telling me how much he loved me and doesn't want to lose me. We talked a little over chat, which at first was him still defending himself and telling me that his friends all agreed with him that he isn't egoistic and that they thought the medical emergency wasn't a big deal either, and that they understand his decision of prioritizing his night out. Eventually, it did ended with him being apologetic, not wanting to lose me, and telling me to give it another chance as he is finally ready to step up. I feel so extremely torn right now as I do love him dearly, and the thought of never seeing him again hurts so much. But I also know that a relationship shouldn't be like this. I deserve to be prioritized and to be loved correctly, but at the same time, just like he said, he isn't a terrible person as he doesn't cheat or treat me horrible. Besides, because of everything he says, I'm starting to doubt myself, whether I'm indeed making a big deal out of nothing. Next story. My boyfriend's parents are controlling everything in our home. Me, F24, and my M27 boyfriend got a starter home together after 3 years of being together, and his parents are controlling everything in our house. How do I fix these boundaries if my boyfriend is unwilling to talk to his family? Last fall, my boyfriend and I were apartment hunting, but couldn't find anything decent. Instead, we decided to look for townhomes or something small. Without communicating with me, he asked his parents for advice, and they quickly became involved in every single decision. I was so grateful and blessed that they wanted to help, but despite me setting boundaries, things started to make me super uncomfortable. His parents made a wish list of furniture for us at West Elm because they had CR**DIC card points they wanted to use. I respectfully told them that I appreciated the offer, but my boyfriend and I had already bought furniture. Not to mention, we have both lived in several apartments on our own and already had a lot of furniture accumulated. When I told them this, they told me to return everything we bought.
All.
4 of us went to look for hardware and cabinets together, and they were very belittling towards my boyfriend, insinuating that he couldn't make decisions on his own because he didn't know what he liked. This really threw me off and made me feel uncomfortable going shopping with them in the future. I didn't really have a choice on anything in our house because his parents wouldn't listen to me. They even picked out all our bedroom furniture, silverware, dining room table, chairs, decor, everything. A lot of my belongings remain in boxes and bins at my parents' basement because I don't know where to store it. All my appliances, TV, tables, chairs, etc. Most recently, I had moved some of my things into our living room. When his dad came over to help with landscaping, my boyfriend moved all of my things into his truck and hid my cat's belongings in the garage. He said he did this because he knows what his dad likes and just wants to keep the peace. I feel so frustrated that he couldn't stand up to his dad and just tell him face to face that I have a cat and that I want my belongings in our shared spaces. I understand that his dad put money towards the home, but I feel like I don't have a space of my own. Next story. My fiancé doesn't know he cheated and doesn't want to admit I, 33F, have been having hard time with my fiancé, 40M, BC of his social drinking. We have been together 6 years. 1.5 years ago, we had a serious discussion ABT the drinking and that I have my boundaries on this and can't accept him to come home in that condition anymore. He agreed, and we talked that if he will do this again, we will need to break up as the disputes after his drinking are too hurtful for me and as I want a kid at some point but with safe parents. Well, 2 weeks ago it happened again. He came home 6 a.m. super drunk and we fought. Now, I went through his phone and realized he was having a girl sitting on his lap and kissing him at a club that weekend. From the messages, I found that he was having a scare on what else happened. In the messages, he was explaining to his friend that his other friend confirmed they hadn't disappeared anywhere with a girl and nothing else happened other than kissing and sitting on a lap, but that. Should he be still afraid something more had happened? He seemed remorseful. We had a serious conversation about our relationship today, and I confirmed we have the same view on what constitutes cheating. We talked about importance of honesty and openness. Then I asked him whether there was anything he'd like to tell me, and he said he would not do anything like that to me ever, and he didn't have anything to tell. Why are you asking? What should I tell? And even asking multiple times, he didn't open up ABT this. Hardest part is, I really love him. My situation is also difficult as we are currently living in a foreign country, and I don't know how to get my stuff out of here as my salary is not enough to live here alone if we want to separate. I wouldn't want to. What should I do? We were supposed to get married next month. Update. We talked, and he finally admitted alcohol is a problem. I said to him, I will never take a role of a mom setting curfews, etc., and asked him to come up with a plan how he would think we could move on from this. He promised to be 4 months without alcohol, and after that he will drink responsibly. Every other drink will be water, no strong alcohols, and never to blackout level, and be at home latest 2 a.m. He promised to start therapy for his alcohol use. We are getting married next month as planned, but now with a large prenup money, only for me, in case I ever want to leave him again. Am I stupid to accept this? I apologized profusely and showed the PPL the same screenshot, and they accepted it. And we went in. He was sulking the whole show, did not laugh or smile. I tried so hard to hold his hand and try to cheer him up, to no avail, and then we canceled the dinner date we were going to go on and came back home. He said he was getting bit by mosquitoes, could have sat in car, and he was not let in, but we were let in with that same mode. This makes me feel like he allowed himself to get extremely angry on purpose. Contrast this with we had a huge fight once before going on a hike, and I cried a lot the night before, but the next morning I decided to have a good time and then sort it out once we got home.
And we did.
In our 3 years of dating, almost every trip, every Christmas, every birthday, every activity I had planned has gone this way. Because when he gets angry at something small, he will not accept your apology, not let you salvage the situation, and will just sit there silently and sulk. There was one time I made a throwaway comment which was not even rude, which he misunderstood during a trip, and then the rest of the trip was him sitting there silently, me apologizing and being irritated at the same time. We have a great marriage otherwise. But I have panic attacks about having to give up all the fun things in life because my companion is like this. I sometimes wish he wasn't there so I can have fun. I am so scared that the rest of my life will be like this. Before we went on a recent vacation to Thailand, which we planned for months, I told him if you sulk and fight on this trip, I will never travel with you again. I don't know if that worked or what, but we didn't fight. This is especially weird for me because my mom was this way. Every event was ruined because she got upset over something tiny and wanted to punish us with her mood. It got to a point where my dad stopped inviting her, or even telling her about the things he was planning to do. I am scared that that's where my relationship is also headed. How do I fix this? What should I do in this situation? TLDR. Husband gets upset, sulks, and ruins all occasions, trips, and events. I want to experience these fun and amazing things with him, but I am scared that this negative attitude he brings will ruin all fun events and occasions in my life. What should we do? Edit 1. Random thing. But when we eventually fought about it, he said, "You want to be let off the hook for your mistake, and that's why you expected me to get over it soon." Like, man, I didn't talk to me about how disappointed you were later. I wanted to be let off the hook for 1 or 2 hours where we watch a show and have dinner. That's not too much, right? Edit 2. For people advising me to leave, I am soft exiting. In the sense, I am trying to see what life alone will be like for me. I have gotten a job in a different country that will keep me away for 2 years at the least. I could extend it if I wanted. The employers have shown a lot of interest in me making it permanent. It will be a long-distance marriage at that point, but I need to give myself a chance to see what a life without him will look like for me. If that life is better, then that's what it'll be for me. Next story. I 30F and my very new boyfriend 31M keeps telling me what to do. How can I raise this with him? While I was not expecting this response, I thought I was just being stubborn and not wanting anyone to tell me what to do like a kid. Thank you, everyone. I think I have some self-reflection to do, Going to keep reading through and replying to all your awesome comments. We were friends for a year or so before this, which does make a difference as we already know each other well. But less than 2 weeks into dating, and he keeps telling me what to do. I was in an 11-year dead bedroom relationship before this, so I've been living for someone else my entire adult life, and since ending things 4 months ago, I'm finally free to live how I like. Part of living how I like was being with who I wanted and getting to have fun again. He's moving quite fast, and I've had to tell him to slow it down. He's told his friends and family about me already and is making future plans. Whereas Eve only just moved out of my ex's house where we still share a mortgage. Here are some of the things he's already telling me what to do/not to do. I want to buy my own little flat to call my own. He keeps telling me it's a bad idea and a tie and will take ages. He doesn't approve and tries to put me off when I get my own place. I want to get a dog. I had them all my life growing up, and I miss it terribly. I pet sit to fill the void. He goes very serious and says this is a bad idea as I won't be able to travel with him at the drop of a hat. Not something I ever said I wanted anyway. He's been trying to convince me not to get a dog since. Gets impatient and slightly annoyed when I fell asleep on his sofa and didn't go to bed when he told me I should. Said I'm stubborn and being annoying. Doesn't like that I play games with my friend on Saturday nights, 2 to 3 times a month, and says I should spend Saturdays with him instead.
Said
I shouldn't start horse riding again, as I don't have the time. I've had horses all my life, and still have 2 retired ones. I don't want to lose this skill. I'm painfully attracted to him, and have fantasized about being with him for so long. We are so compatible in every other way, other than I hate being told what to do, and he keeps doing it. It's so early on in the relationship that I don't even know how to broach this subject with him. What would be a good way to go about it? I feel like I've been a doll all my life that people expect to do as I'm told and sit pretty on the shelf. Next story. My 28F best friend, 29M, is barely talking to me after we shared an intimate moment. Using a throwaway because he follows my actual account. I've known my friend since middle school. We were neighbors and went to the same schools, and we've always been super close. Until very recently, there were absolutely no romantic feelings or attraction between us. He's always just been my friend. A few months ago, we had a falling out. He was dating this crazy girl who was treating him like shit. She was super controlling over him. We pretty much never saw each other after they started dating. He called me one night to complain about her not giving him any space, and I told him exactly what I thought about her. I did not like her. She was rude, and he could definitely have been doing better. When I told him all of that, he blew up at me. He said I was meddling in his relationship and that I didn't know her. He called me some pretty harsh words and told me I was jealous. I had no feelings for him at the time other than seeing him as my best friend. I wasn't jealous. I just miss my friend and thought he should be treated better. After that call, we didn't talk much at all for months until 2 weeks ago. He stopped hanging around our friend group when I was there and he didn't return my messages. Well, they broke up, and while he didn't message me right away, he eventually started sending me stuff on IG. Just memes and reels, nothing much, and we didn't talk about his breakup. That is until last week when he called me and apologized for just falling off with me. He told me I was right about her controlling him, and he said that she didn't want him talking to me because she thought I wanted him. We made up, and I met him at his place to hang out for the first time in months. When we were hanging out, we were getting really physically close in a way that we had never done before. And we ended up hooking up. I never thought that would happen with him. I think maybe not seeing him for a while made me miss him to the point that new feelings developed. Like an hour after, he told me that we shouldn't have hooked up, that I was like a sister to him, and that he wasn't attracted to me at all. We got into an argument, and I ended up leaving without staying the night. Now we're back to not really talking at all. He'll send a funny thing he saw on IG every other day, but he won't discuss anything with me at all. I don't know what to do. He's been my best friend forever, and now we've had 2 back-to-back falling outs. I don't know how I feel about him, but I don't want to lose him from my life. Do I just give this time? Do I call him and insist that we talk about what happened? This is really tearing me apart. Next story. How do I, 27F, explain to my husband, 30M, that him screaming at video games is not okay? I, 27F, have been with my husband, 30M, for close to 10 years, 2.5 years married. Through the years, we've obviously had our ups and downs, but we are in a big slump right now. We decided to start trying to have kids recently and even went through a bunch of genetic and fertility tests to make sure we were prepared. A few months in, I realized that there were so many traits and behaviors that we both, but mostly my husband, needed to work on before I felt comfortable having kids with him. One of the biggest things was his lack of emotional awareness and control. He is one of the biggest hearts ever, but he also can be pretty ruthless sometimes. The biggest problem that made me snap out of it was the fact that when he plays video games, whether winning or losing, he screams pretty loud. He calls it being passionate, but it's so uncomfortable and embarrassing. He used to say pretty vulgar and non-politically correct terms, which I set pretty firm expectations against, and has gotten better about that, but the screaming has not stopped. I know that this behavior is common in some gaming spaces, but I just can't get over or past it. I do not want to raise our kids with that as an example of expressing emotions of anger, dissatisfaction, or even triumph. He has thrown things, controller, his phone, etc. in the past and has gotten away from that habit, but he still doesn't see the issue with the screaming. To add context here, we live in a suburban area and he has an office/game room we have built in the garage. I can hear him in our front and backyards in the house and at our mailbox across the street sometimes. How do I explain to him that his volume and aggressiveness is not okay? TLDR. How do I explain to my husband that even though he's worked on some of his aggressive video game behaviors, it's still not okay for him to scream loud enough that I can hear him across the street, win or lose, and that what he is doing is not being passionate, but a toxic or gross behavior? Edit. Thank you for everyone for taking the time to comment and for sharing your experiences. I wanted to address some of the relevant questions here. What video games does he play, and is it all or just some? He plays mostly COD, but he can react that way to pretty much any game. Does he have ADHD? I do not think he does, but he wouldn't get assessed for it if anyone thought he might, so no clue. I, on the other hand, do. What non-PC things did he say? I'll just say we are both white, and I'm bisexual, so he shouldn't be saying one, and the other hurts me to hear. There is absolutely no need for those words to be used. I will say that he didn't use them outside of trash talk, but I know that is still no excuse and why I told him I would not put up with them being used. Do our values align? Most of the time, no. We have had a lot of discussions and made a lot of compromises along the way. This is another big reason I decided we should wait to have kids, though. I was also raised by a mom who wanted kids bad enough that she ignored her husband's red flags and then stayed in the marriage for religious reasons. I do not want to repeat her mistakes. I have very specific things I do and do not want to do while raising kids, but I do not believe wanting them is a good enough reason to have them. If that is something I do, I want it to be with someone who agrees with me in those values and is willing to address the things we've done wrong down the line when our kids come to us. On that note, how does he react when I come to him about things? Sometimes he is very open to those conversations and feedback, while other times he is not. I did let him know that I was ready to walk away from the relationship if he was not willing to work on the issues I brought to him. I did ask that he give me feedback as well, so I could improve myself. What are the things I needed to work on? As I mentioned above, I have ADHD. I also have severe anxiety and struggle with depression.
I
Am in therapy to work through those things and to address how to build routines and understand myself. Basically, I'm messy. I don't cook as often as I should. He mostly takes care of that. I forget about chores sometimes, and I struggle to do them. I know as an adult it is my responsibility to share in those tasks, so I am working on being more responsible, I guess. Why was it not an issue before, but is now? There have always been things I've asked him to work on, and he did address a lot of the things I brought up to him. The issues we are having now, including the screaming, is something he has not fully resolved or has gotten worse again since being married. I have almost left him several times and that made him work on it for a while, and most things stuck, but not everything. To clarify, I do not just give ultimatums when it's rough because I hate that. I struggle with confrontation, so I have to work up the nerve to have these conversations with him, and by that time, I am almost resolved to leave. I feel that isn't fair because I've not given him the opportunity to address them, so usually we end up working through it. I am fully prepared to leave this relationship should he choose not to address his issues this time in a way that doesn't just work for now, but creates lasting changes. Is therapy an option? I have asked him to go to therapy in the past, whether individual or couples. He did not want to until I told him I was ready to leave. He went for 3 months by himself, then stopped going because he didn't really see the need and his therapist wasn't helping him, as well as it was too expensive for him to continue. I have been in therapy myself for a couple years now. I have had to schedule an appointment for the two of us to go together, through my benefits. I specifically mentioned anger management issues, so they put us with someone who has been doing that for close to 40 years. We have not been able to get in yet, but have the appointment for soon. What is he can be pretty ruthless? Two of the other issues we are addressing are name calling and unintentional belittling. I know this is not an excuse, but I am clarifying anyways. This is the example he was raised with. His stepdad is one of the worst human beings I have ever met when it comes to abusing their partner without laying a hand on them. He talks down to my husband's mother, calls her names, belittles her, and treats her like garbage. He likes to make others feel small compared to him by bullying and gaslighting. He makes everyone the butt of the joke while talking himself up in the process and then makes you believe you're the problem for having an issue with it. My husband's mom and I are in the same boat of wanting to get out but also needing to know we've tried everything to honor our vows first. My husband, unlike his stepdad, is trying to address those qualities, at least to some extent, which is why I have stayed as long as I have. I know his behavior is unacceptable and I am fully prepared to walk away if this continues. I do not think that wanting kids is good enough reason to just have them. I want to be emotionally, mentally, and financially prepared for that. Everyone always says there's no right time, but I know right now is not the right time.